Alright, we're going to talk about integers and also really focusing on double-signed numbers. Those are the ones that give students the biggest problems. And I break it down as easy as building a snowman. We have our positive snowmen and we have our negative snowmen. We have people that are positive and we have people that are negative. And we always want to know how many we have more of one than the other. And it's really that simple. Let's take an expression like negative 5 plus 4. And let's use our smiling faces and negative faces to figure out what type of integers we have. Now, I'm always going to tell my students to circle your terms. So when we circle terms, we want to make sure that we circle not only the number, but the sign or maybe the double sign that's in front of it. So this right here is a 5, and I look at the sign and it's a negative sign. And so I know that I'm going to say that this is a negative integer, negative 5. Okay. The positive 4, I'm going to go ahead and circle that. I circle the 4, the sign in front of it is a positive sign, and so I know that this integer is positive. Now I look at these and I say, okay, if I have all these positives in one room and all the negatives in the same room, and we separate them to two sides of the room, what do I have more of? Are there more negatives or are there more positives? And yeah, there's more negatives. And one of the ways that we can kind of figure this out is that I've got 4 positives and 5 negatives, and actually 5 negatives can break down. I can make a group of 4 negatives if I wanted to, and that would leave 1 negative by itself. And that means that the 4 positives here and the 4 negatives, they match up and they become perfect opposites, and they would cancel each other out. So when we look at this, we can look at it kind of two ways, but we recognize that there is 1 negative that's left over. We have 1 more negative than we do positives, and so our answer to this expression is going to be negative 1. Alright, let's take a look at examples where we either have 2 signs in front of a number or we don't have a sign at all. And what I notice here is I've got a 4 that doesn't have a sign. I've got a 2 that has the minus sign in front of it in the parentheses, but then also a positive sign outside of the parentheses. I have a 6 that has a negative sign in front of it inside the parentheses, and then a negative sign outside of the parentheses that's in front of it. And then I have a 1, and that 1 has a positive sign in front of it inside the parentheses, and a negative sign outside of the parentheses that's also in front of it. So we got a lot going on here. So the first thing that we've got to really make sure that we understand is that any number that does not have a sign in front of it, that's known as a positive number. Alright, so we have 4 positives to start. Now we have all these different combinations. Let's go through these for a second off to the side. If I have, and really the big one that you got to watch out for is what I call the red flag, and that's where we have 2 negative signs next to each other. 2 negative signs is going to produce a positive answer. That's the only time we see negatives that will produce a positive number or positive answer. 2 negative signs next to each other. Everything else, positive next to a negative or negative next to a positive, both of those keep the number as negative. And what I like to say is just cross out the plus signs. That's the easiest way to do this. So when I go and look at negative 2 with the positive sign in front of it, if I cross this plus sign out, I have a negative 2. That's it. There's 1 sign there. So I can put my snowman head as a negative. If I skip over the 6 for a minute and look at the 1 and cross out that plus sign again, I notice that, okay, now it's just negative 1. So the plus sign really doesn't do anything. We notice that it's going to just be a negative 1. Here's our red flag. 2 negative signs in front of a number. What does that mean? Well, we said it over here that this means it's going to be actually a positive number. We're going to have a positive 6 here. And so what I like to do is rewrite this stuff. And you know, don't even include signs if you don't want to. Look at them as individual terms. So my first one, I've got a positive 4. My second one, I've got a negative 2. I space them out so that I can see exactly what I've got. My third one, this one's our positive. I've got a positive 6. And the last one, I have a negative 1. And now my strategy is that I want to put all my negatives together on one side of the room and all my positives on the other. And so I notice I've got a 4 and a 6, and that gives me a total of 10 positives. And I can put the sign there if I want to, or I can erase it and just leave it as 10. I then want to go ahead and put my negatives together. If I have 2 negatives and 1 negative, that gives me a total of 3 negatives. And so now we've got our numbers kind of separated to their sides. 10 positives on one side of the room, 3 negatives on the other, and now we compare them. What do we have more of? Do we have more positives or do we have more negatives? Well, in this case, there are definitely more positives than negatives. How many more positives are there? And here's another strategy for you. Take whatever you're at, if we have 3 negatives, and just count up. From 3, how many does it take to get to 10? Well, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That would mean that there are 7 more positives in the room than there are negatives. And so 7 is going to be our answer for this one. Alright, this example I'm going to do with money. I like to make sure that we relate it back to something that we know, and money is something that everybody knows. And so what I want to do is go through and circle my terms. I still have a 12 with no sign in front of it, which means it's positive. I then have an 8 with a positive and a negative sign. And remember, cross out the positives. They don't do anything. And what that tells us is, oh, there's a negative sign left, so this $8 is a negative amount of money. Now, negative amounts of money, that either means you owe somebody or you have some debt. So let's understand those money terms right away. The last one has, our $3 here has 2 negative signs in front of it. That is our red flag. We got to watch out for those. Our red flag tells us that this is going to be a positive amount of money. Okay. Let's take a look at what we have. We have $12. We have 8 negative dollars. And we have 3 positive dollars. And again, I'm not putting the positive sign in front of the dollar amounts that are positive. We know that if it's a dollar amount by itself, it's positive. Let's put all of our positives on one side of the room. So 12 and 3 can be put together and give us $15. And that leaves our negative 8 kind of off to the side by itself. Now again, putting our positive face and negative face on these numbers, what do we have more of? That's the question we have to ask ourselves here. Do I have more positive dollars or a positive amount of money, or do I have a negative amount of money and more debt? Here I have more money than debt. How much more money do I have? I like using the counting up method for myself because I can count easily from 8 to 15 and find out how much more money do I actually have. Well, if I count up from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that gives me a total of $7 that I have left. And that's my money. I had $15, I paid for something that was $8, and I have $7 left. So a little bit of a recap. Make sure that you circle your terms. Make sure that you use your positive faces or negative faces in order to determine what type of number it is. Be sure to watch out for those red flag signs, the two negative signs in front of a number. That's going to give us a red flag because two negatives in front of a number change it to a positive. Try using the counting up method when trying to determine how much is left. If you have more positives than negatives or more negatives than positives, count up to determine how many more there are of either positives or negatives. And be sure to also cross out those plus signs. We know that a number with no sign in front of it is automatically positive. So cross out those plus signs that you see, and maybe that number is going to become a lot easier to determine whether it's positive or negative.